Well, ballots have been cast and drop boxes are now closed across the state. Good evening. I'm Joyce Taylor.
And I'm Mark Wright. Thanks for being here tonight. Counties are busy right now counting the votes as the Democratic candidates pursue their party's nomination and President Trump seeks re-election. So here are the numbers so far. And look how close these numbers are. Right now, Bernie Sanders has 32.7% of the vote to Joe Biden's 32.5%. The vote separation is just about 2,000 votes, so it's very close, but a lot more ballots have to be counted.
So remember, ballots were mailed out in our state in February on the 18th. A lot of people, hundreds of thousands, cast their votes before Super Tuesday. And if we factor in the candidates who've already dropped out, 12% voted for Elizabeth Warren, 11% for Michael Bloomberg.
The only state voting today with more delegates than the state of Washington, Michigan. And take a look, NBC is calling Joe Biden the winner there. So to help us break down these numbers so far, Chief Political Reporter Chris Daniels live in the newsroom. Hey, Chris.
Hi, Mark. Yeah, Michigan, Missouri, Mississippi, all going for Joe Biden. And I'm joined now by our King 5 News political analyst, Ron Sims, and Scott McClellan. We've been talking about this all night. And Washington, the second biggest delegate haul on the Democratic side tonight. The biggest one, Michigan. And Scott has been chomping at the bit for the last hour and a half. He's been crunching the numbers on Michigan in particular. And what stands out tonight, that's a state that Bernie Sanders won in the primary 4 years ago.
That's right. And all across that state, Joe Biden is running stronger than Hillary Clinton did 4 years ago. Remember, in the general election, Michigan was key. If Donald Trump doesn't win Michigan, he is not president of the United States. He won it by 11,000 votes. So what you're seeing tonight is that Joe Biden is running strong in rural areas, he's running strong among suburban voters, and he's running very strong among African American voters. That bodes well for him heading into the general election and capturing Michigan and maybe some of those other states that went Republican last time after not going Republican for many years. Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and then Ohio is always a key state as well.
Yeah, so here closer to home, Ron, we've been talking all night about our King 5 Survey USA poll of Washington state voters in advance of this showed essentially a dead heat between Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders. Tonight, we essentially have those results playing out, a dead heat between those two. Anything that surprises you? I think you were a little surprised that Bernie didn't have a bigger cushion.
I thought Bernie would have a bigger cushion, and but you know, Washington State is like is a good barometer for the rest of the country. If you look at the polls, when you look at what happened in the voting, we look like America, and so I think that Biden and Bernie were very close. Biden's going to be the nominee, and that excites me for a number of reasons. But Bernie was a good candidate. He is going into a meeting tomorrow. He made that really clear after Michigan that he was going to bring his people together. And I think the real issue for him is, where can I go now and win? Where can I get the money to go now and win? But I think this is now a Joe Biden's race to lose.
Last 15 seconds, you think it's over?
I do. You're hearing that from Joe Biden tonight. He's starting to try to appeal to Sanders supporters himself, and the revolution is done.
We'll leave it with that. Scott McClellan, Ron Sims, our King 5 News political analyst. Send it back to you.
So I have a split question then. So if it turns out that Biden is the nominee, to me, he has two problems. How does he unify the party and really bring Sanders supporters to his camp, and also get the younger voters who really, for Democrats, are in Sanders' camp and not really with Biden?
I think that if I were Joe Biden, I would say this to young voters: if you don't vote, you voted for the winner. So if you're not voting for me, if I'm the Democratic nominee, you voted for Trump, and you can't say that your no vote or not voting did not count. It is a factor. So I think he'll bring them into play in a very big way. And so I'm very confident about younger voters moving to Joe Biden.
I think it's two sets of voters. It's younger voters and Latino voters that Joe Biden will be reaching out to now that he has really seized command in this race. And I don't see Sanders staying in this race, as Ron was alluding to a minute ago. There's just not a path forward to overcome the delegate difference that is ahead, given the states that remain that are strong for Biden, like Florida, Georgia, states like that, where he's going to win big.
Joyce, Mark?
All right, gentlemen, thank you.
So far, Democrats have shown a higher voter turnout compared to Republicans in this primary election. The chairman of Washington's Republican Party says that does not show a lack of support for the incumbent president, Donald Trump. He joined us earlier tonight to talk about the primary election results.
Not at all. I mean, in this primary, you had 13 Democratic candidates, and only on our side, just President Trump. So Democrat voters in Washington state had every reason to participate. You had Michael Bloomberg spending millions of dollars of ads during Seahawks playoff games during the Super Bowl. Bernie Sanders had a rally in Tacoma. So they have 13 candidates all driving out their voters. And we saw really unprecedented turnout. President Trump is receiving more votes in this primary than any Republican candidate in the history of Washington state presidential primaries, and he's doing that while he was unopposed. We've seen almost 600,000 people participate. That is a record for participation.
As we have mentioned, Senator Sanders and former Vice President Joe Biden, they have had a slim margin between the two of them, a fraction of a percentage point. The chair of Washington's Democratic Party says while supporters are split, they all have the same end goal.
I think what it means is people are divided on who they want to have carry out the ideals of the Democratic Party. We have terrific candidates. I think we all want to get to the same destination of unity and things like health care for everyone, income inequality, fixing our justice system. We might have some differences on how we get there, but the destination is the same, and Democrats will be there in November.
So there has been a lot of activity at the King County Elections headquarters amid record turnout.
King 5's Natalie Swaby joins us live from Renton with the story. Natalie, good evening.
Oh, good evening. Yeah, we are talking about 40% turnout as of today, and of course there's still ballots to be counted. That is record-breaking for King County for a presidential primary. They tell me the previous record was 34%. Now here the doors closed at 8 o'clock tonight, but we want to show you what it looked like earlier as people were arriving here to either register and vote or to drop off a ballot today. Now in another part of the building, they were processing those ballots, and that's where workers were required to wear gloves because of coronavirus concerns. The ballots are being carefully checked, and one thing workers are looking for, voters must mark Democrat or Republican on their ballot. So far, about 24,000 people have failed to do that or to sign their ballot, and King County Elections will be contacting those people. They have until March 19th to get that party preference issue resolved and still count the ballot. If that doesn't happen, then the ballot is considered invalid. Tonight, we heard from a few voters about how they made their decision.
I decided to vote for Bernie. Student loans are a big issue, and so I'm hoping to get some change seen with that, and I don't know, we'll see.
I just think that we can probably get a little bit of back to normal with Joe Biden compared to things the way they are now.
Joe Biden, I think he's going to win. And I was a Kamala Harris guy, but she just didn't get any traction. So Joe was probably my second or third pick from the beginning. But yeah, I'm okay with Joe.
King County Elections says they tallied about half of the ballots tonight, and the majority of the ballots should be counted by Friday. The election should be certified by March 20th. Live in Renton, Natalie Swaby, King 5 News.
All right, Natalie, thank you. So Bernie Sanders won this state's Democratic caucuses 4 years ago, but this year ballots cast in the primary election will determine who gets the delegates.
King 5's Sebastian Robertson joined the Sanders supporters at a watch party tonight. So Sebastian, how are things going there?
Well, what was a watch party for Senator Sanders has quickly just fizzled back into regular evening crowd in Capitol Hill, if you should say it that way. And I want to point out that it wasn't a modest crowd because the candidate can't draw. It was a modest crowd because what we've been talking about for the last week or so, which is the coronavirus. And that caused all major campaign events here in the greater Seattle area to be canceled. This was the only loosely organized Sanders event that took place in a public place that we could find. Here's what it looked like as results came down in King County just after 8 o'clock. Maybe a little over a dozen people here supporting the senator. And as we saw, this race was razor thin, and the results were a surprise to at least one King County voter.
But I thought there might be still more candidates in the race tonight, honestly. I didn't expect that all of the candidates would be dropping out and coalescing around Vice President Biden. And it's a lot closer than I thought because, Senator Sanders had won so overwhelmingly in 2016. So it's a little bit of a surprise.
This evening started with a lot of other states that are hosting primaries, with those elections being called very quickly. That is proving not to be the case here in Washington state, as the divide remains razor thin, and what happens in the next 24 hours and in coming days will be very telling for who wins the delegates here in Washington state. In Capitol Hill, Sebastian Robertson, King 5 News.
Thank you, Sebastian. So how is the Trump campaign viewing Washington tonight? We talked with the National Press Secretary for the campaign, Kayleigh McEnany, told King 5 it doesn't really matter if Sanders or Biden win because the president views them as having similar ideology of big government takeover. What she says will be interesting is voter turnout in our state for President Trump.
Well, President Trump, yes, of course, is the foregone victor in these primaries and caucuses, but it is interesting to see weeks when he breaks records in vote totals or turnouts in states that we're not even making a play for at the moment.
As of yesterday, 62% of returned ballots in Washington were on the Democratic side, according to the Secretary of State's office.